Good morning, Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I'm loving my life. Who could complain on a day like today? It's not going to be me. I'm not going to complain. Things are going great. We're loving things. Lance 2002 is the first in the chat, and he says, rise and shine, Bitcoiners. Indeed, it's time to rise and shine. Do not hide your light under a bushel. Shine. Good morning, America, says Young Tommy. Young Tommy, I covered yesterday at the very end of the show a story, and I saw you in the chat or in the comments, which was the Christmas bombing of Nashville. And I never even knew about. I mean, I think you told me about it once, but it's one of those things that it's just that I forgot or something. I don't know. Anyway, we're going to be paying attention to that, see what's going on, and we're hoping for it. BTC Plebinator says Ed Gallerin will usher in the golden age. I hate to tell you, BTC Plebinator, but nobody even knows who Ed Gallerin really is. I think you're still sad about Thomas Massey, but don't worry, BTC Plebinator. He's on to the ballroom. He's joined the ballroom fight. He wants answers about the ballroom. So you've got a good 6 months now of Thomas Massey talking about the ballroom, the pressing issue of our time. But I'm afraid unless Ed Gallerin gets in on a bit of this ballroom talk, no one's going to know who he is, because we just don't care about Kentucky congressmen. It's just not a thing that we talk about, really. So Ed Gallerin, I mean, I'm glad you know his name. I don't really, nor do I care about him. Noah Simsa says, hi, Awakeners. I am here only for a few minutes today. We're going to miss you, Noah. Chatelet, everyone. Barely 45 says, Chef Zero says, fight the good fight of faith. Lay hold on eternal life, whereunto thou art also called, and hast professed a good profession before many witnesses. Indeed. Ed Gallerin makes the chat again. BTC Plebinator, you love Ed Gallerin, I think. Chef Zero, or maybe it's ironic. Maybe your ironic joke will be funny the 7th time you put it in the chat today. Maybe then we'll start to find it funny. We'll see. Blessings, fellow Bampians. Good morning, Noha. As they say, check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. Indeed, Seaburger17. Good morning, Count and Crew. Stab it with their steely knives. Welcome to the Hotel California. But if we have our intact love of the Big Lebowski going on here, you can't do that in this chat, guys. Not the fucking Eagles. Rise and shine, says Terrence Bergen. Bitcoin is Hotel California. Lance 2002 says, at least Ed won't stand in the way like Massey did. Ed Gallerin is one of the greatest politicians we've ever had. I think you're his mascot, BTC Plebinator. You got to get a costume. The golden age is here. The golden age is here. We're excited about the golden age. CB off, and on a crazy tear already. Fuegwo guy, Fuegwo Plebinator. You realize how silly that name is, right? Plebinator, come on. We love Plebinators. Another frog says, good morning, gang. Ça sent moins la coupe. Non, c'est fini, another frog. C'est fini, man. On était pas assez en forme, là. Après 14 jeux, on a joué 14 fois quand les Hurricanes de Caroline, ils ont juste joué 8 matchs, c'est trop. On n'est pas assez physique encore. Je crois qu'on va perdre facilement, en fait. We looked terrible. I turned it off yesterday and, I don't know, 20 minutes in. Not even. I didn't get through the first period. It was so stupid. They don't do anything. It's the most boring hockey I've ever seen in my life. Sorry. I mean, I don't really care when hockey ends at this time of year. It's too nice. It's like a burden to me. You know, I live near the arena and it's just chaos. And there's so many people around. Unless we were winning, it wouldn't really, you know, then it's worth it. But this whole thing where we can't get a shot on net and you're just watching them get their asses kicked every minute, can't enter the zone, Terrible, terrible, just so boring. I love the team. I think they'll win a cup eventually, but it's not this year. We got to time the Habs winning the cup for when Quebec is sovereign, because we don't want Canada winning the Stanley Cup again. We want Quebec to win the Stanley Cup. So I didn't like the timing of it this year anyway, politically and all the rest of it. So we wanted to align with the golden age. Thank you. More on Ed Gallerin here from BTC Plebinator. He'll go down in history as the next Thomas Jefferson. I have it the other way around, BTC Plebinator. I have Donald Trump going down as the refounding father of America as George Washington. And I don't know who Ed is, so there you go. We don't have any idea who Ed is, and I don't think he's part of the refounding fathers. I think that Besant is more like the Thomas Jefferson. Or no, I guess we got him as Hamilton. Who do we have as Jefferson again in the refounding fathers? I don't think I forget who I said is Thomas Jefferson, but there's definitely one out there. You know those movies where the lads bang on the table with their silverware? We need such a committee for Nolan. Ready, after me. We need a count on the airwaves in these NPC days. Say it again. I'm here. Suntech is indeed operational. Good morning, Nolan. Great Awakening crew. Morning all. JJ Fox. Always love seeing and hearing your cheerful self. Oh, I can be doing I actually took this out so that we could be sharing the chat. And here I am not sharing the chat. Thanks for loving hearing my cheerful self. I remember the Christmas bombing. Yeah, and it's so crazy. It's the ballroom blitz. It's a ballroom. He's on the ballroom question. Remember, everyone was all excited about what Thomas Massey's gonna do. He's uncorked. He's got nothing to lose. I'm gonna go into the ballroom. Who's paying for the ballroom? What about the ballroom? Wait till you see what he's up to. Wait till you see. Oh my, what are you speaking? Arrête là, c'est français. C'est le français là. Arrête. You know, my wife and I will make these. So if you say what in Quebecois, you go quoi, right? So what is quoi? But there's or we, right? But if you go hard Quebec accent, and my wife and I will super exaggerate our Quebec accent when we're doing this. So you go, why, quack. We'll go really hard on it. And it's kind of a funny thing because, so if you need to know more about Quebecois French, it's basically the Scottish, right? Don't think of it as like American English is to English as Quebec French, because we're in the Americas, is to France French. It's more like Scottish is to French. And so it's the Scottish version of French. And so now if you're just in the normal Quebecers in the city here have there is an American version of the accent in Quebec even, and it's a much easier, just like American English is quite a bit easier to understand. It can be well articulated. It can be really easy to get, and not as fast as in France. And in France, they don't really use their throat. They just speak with their lips. So I'll give you an example of what speaking. I'll speak English, but if you're in France, you always speak like this with your little lips, and you barely move anything, and you barely make any noises right here, because you always are just speaking with your lips, and it's very difficult to understand people because they speak very quickly and everything's in their lips all the time. So that's not in Quebec. They actually do enunciate everything, and they speak at a decent pace, let's say, right? You can understand it, like in America. But the real country Quebecois, like we call it Joal. So it's kind of a mix of I don't know. It's Scottish French. And so that's the one. So here's the funny part is that when we moved to the Eastern Townships, which is that English neighborhood, that I always talk about on the Vermont border, when my family moved and I was about 5 years old from here in the city to out there, we were always, and still are to this day, seen as city people who moved to the country, because it's a lot like Vermont in the sense that it's pretty insular and all of that stuff. And so we were always just city people. So in our home, we adopted a fun accent to talk about the country people all around us who we love, and we are them now. But the funny thing is, we used to put the accent on, but my parents now actually speak that way. Like they kept the accent and then they made it go literal. They're capable of not speaking that way, but they've got like real hillbilly Appalachian accents now, which is pretty funny. And so my wife and I are worried the same thing is happening to us, because I'm now incapable of, if she says something, I just go why quack. And my kids are always like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Donc, on peut parler français quand on parle des Canadiens de Montréal. Comme ça, il faut accent on accent. Yeah, you got it. You got it. More Ed Gallerin. We got more. Who the fuck is? I don't even know. Like, I didn't pay attention to who beat Thomas Massey. The only reason I even know it's Ed Gallerin is because BTC Plebinator is his mascot and is spending so much time pumping Ed Gallerin's tires around here. But I'll forget his name at the end of the show, because I'm just uninterested in Kentucky congressmen. I don't care. It's not a subject I'm interested in. And I really don't care who's representing the state of Kentucky at the congressional level. As long as it's a Republican, I don't really give a shit. That's just me, though. That's just me. So there you go, everyone. Those are some comments, but let's acknowledge that is a major sunrise behind us. We've got operational SunTech. We are doing great. We love it. And Bitcoin is also running, everyone. We're currently at 73,000 US trash tokens. That is what is going on. And I saw, because I don't, because, so I what was I going to say? I don't know, muted him, or I don't pay attention, but you know, this Justin Belcher guy who is like a legitimately terrible analyst in Bitcoin. But someone shared a thread of him that he wrote yesterday about Naka and David Bailey. And so you got to choose to read it, because otherwise if you mute or block or whatever, you don't have access. So I decided to look at it, and it's not looking good. And if these prices continue down, his theory more or less is that Saylor is going to get the event and the magazine in order to get the Bitcoin. It's part of a deal, I guess you could say. Don't know if that's true, but I do not recommend listening to Justin Belcher as an analyst. But I mean, he put a lot of work into it. Well, I guess AI probably wrote the most of it, but it looked pretty convincing math-wise. But again, we all know I didn't check the math, so obviously it could all be bullshit and fake. But there you go. A Quebecois version of the Scottish brogue. I don't know what a Scottish brogue is. Is it the accent, Jack 2K? I'm not sure. Sats on sale, indeed. Escape the Matrix. Sats are on sale today. C. Berger says, I like you, but please let go of Ed. No, we love it. We wouldn't know who Ed is. Now we know. If you're ever in a trivia environment and they say, who was the congressman who beat Thomas Massey and resulted in Thomas Massey joining the ballroom blitz, right? If that ever comes up on Jeopardy, now you know the answer. Who is Ed Gallerin? That's all you got to do now. So if it wasn't for BTC Plebinator being a mascot for Ed Gallerin, we would have no idea what's going on in Kentucky. Tomorrow I will go back to having no idea what is going on in Kentucky. But for today, it's good to know a little bit, I guess, right? It's good to know a little bit. You gotta know. All right. So let us have another sip of coffee due to the shock of the Bitcoin price. Well, who cares? Let's have a sip of coffee and then we're going to talk about what the NPCs are hearing about. It's not going great, guys. It's really, we got some special ones today. It's not going great. Nothing on Ed Gallerin, unfortunately. Or Thomas Massey. I don't have any of his ballroom investigations. Apparently, he's out in Costa Rica with what's her slut. The green, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Apparently, he's out there. Okay, so let's start with some NPC news. Not going great, guys. You're not going to believe this, too. This is something I didn't think the first one I have today is something you're going to say, they can't measure that. No way. No, apparently they can. So we're going to find out about it. It's big news, guys. Really big news. Everything out of order. I just don't understand where they come up with this order shit. Come on. Eureka. I'm looking for Eureka. Where's Eureka? It's not even here, apparently. American Debunk. Because all I get when I share the tab is, a few words from who sent the tweet. That's how I navigate this stuff. Observing consciousness, James E. Zeneb Rubia. It's just not even here. What the fuck? Okay, well, we'll do it this way. Fuck you too. So, guys, I was telling you yesterday about some Antarctic ice. There was it was 12 feet of ocean front, right? The shoreline's going to change. Here's something I didn't even know, guys. Sensitivity, guys. The sensitivity of Arctic ice to climate change increase. It increased after the ice age shift 1 million years ago. So, we were looking into the sensitivity of ice because we all know how to measure the sensitivity of Arctic ice to climate change, right? So we can do that today. But we can also measure the sensitivity of Antarctic ice to climate change over 1 million years ago. And then we can compare it to what happened exactly 1 million years ago. And we can compare it to today. Did you know we can do that? Did you know that there's a way to measure over millions of years the sensitivity of Antarctic ice to climate change? So, you look into the mollusk shells, you go get a little bit of that, you go get a little bit of those nanoparticles. Remember, we heard about the nanoparticles in the Arctic ice. We can get a bit of the nanoparticles. Right, so we get the nanoparticles, we get the mollusk shells, we do ice cores, we drill into the ice, and we go, oh, look, here's some million-year-old ice. Let me check its sensitivity to climate change. And then we just compare it, and you're not going to believe it. It's not great, guys. The sensitivity of Antarctic ice to climate change is increasing. It's increasing. It was bad over 1 million years ago. It was better before that. But now, guys, a new study published in Nature Geoscience, guys, says we're in big trouble at the Busan National University. I used to hang out here all the time. That's funny. It comes from there. That was like my old hangout spot in South Korea. Great batting cage around there. Great batting cage. Great restaurants. A lot of fun. So there you go, guys. that old ice got more sensitive. Sensitive ice. Old sensitive ice. Right. Here's one from the New York Times. I don't ever let them, we talk about, helping children understand what's going on with all this climate change business, right? We help children understand what's going on. Now we find out scientists ditched a scary climate scenario. What now? So it's good. We got to make sure kids can even read this stuff. It used to be scary, guys. But the scientists ditched the scary scenario. They were like, this isn't that cool anymore. The scientists were like, get me out of here. And now we find out about this. June is the new July. This was from last year. Why intense summer heat is arriving earlier. So that was last year. So last year, June was July. But this year, summer is coming, but it might not feel like it at first. Now, June is June again. So last year, June was July, but now June is June. So that's good news. We're back to June being June. I don't want to accept any of this stuff. Get out of here. Manage my choices. How the fuck did you ask me 7 times for this? Fuck off. Europe heat wave, brutal reminder, everyone. We're getting, you'd forgotten about it, right? Because you're getting on with your life, and then it's like, bam, oh shit, we do have climate change. Brutal reminder. We get this exceptionally early heat wave shatters records and brings death across Europe. It brings death. But when you read the article, you find out that actually some people drowned because it was warm out. And that's why it's important to talk about drowning, right? We do have to talk about drowning, right? And here we find out water safety experts. Guys, water safety experts. What did they learn in water safety expert school? Don't drown. Learn how to swim. Remember, we learned that the other day, though. They let us all know. Swimming lessons. Remember the one we had the other day? Swimming lessons, according to experts, were vital in preventing drowning. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that one from last week. But they're back at it. The water safety experts, after, like we said, exceptionally early heat wave shatters and brings death, right? But 10 were from drownings. It's not funny. People are drowning. It's a serious business. Remember, watch like a hawk when you're at the water. Drowning is definitely real, definitely happens, and it is quiet. Always be on the lookout, and always consult the water safety experts. Warns dangers of outdoor swimming. But remember, they helped us last week. Don't laugh at them. Okay, they were a big help. We didn't know until the experts weighed in that swimming lessons were vital to prevent drowning. Now we know. We get this: global temperatures head for record highs in the next 5 years. You love the 5-day weather forecast. You love the old 10-day weather forecast, right? The 10-day weather you know how the 5-day and the 10-day work, right? The 5-day is, they can sort of have an idea of what patterns are emerging and all that. But anything after the 5-day, 5 to 10 to 14, those are all just averages minus the 5-day forecast. So the 5-day forecast, what they suggest is that if that 5-day forecast is out of average or in average, then everything that happens after makes up for the 5 days not being as part of the average, because eventually it'll blend over. Not a bad idea. So that's the kind of science that goes into the 10-day forecast. And, people always say they don't ever predict. They're terrible. Well, you didn't know that we can actually, nothing to do with 5 days, 10 days, 14 days. We can do 5 years, guys. 5 years. You got a wedding coming up? You got a wedding in 2 years? Ask them. You'll get some temperature projections, right? But even though last year they said that June was July and now June is June, we're a little skeptical. But other bad news, guys. Some pollination needs a bee's buzz. Climate change may be threatening the bees again. The bees are dying. We keep hearing about it. They keep living, but now they're dying again. We got bee problems. Oh, this one is excellent. You're not going to believe. Look at this fucking Trump again, right? God damn it, Trump. You're ruining everything. Revealed huge climate cost of harmful emissions from U.S. immigration flights. Guys, all of the deportation, do you know what's that's doing to the sensitive Arctic ice? Do you know how many people it's killing because they have to go swimming because it's so hot, but they didn't know that you had to learn how to swim before you went swimming? Do you know what this is doing? Do you know how many emissions are coming out into the air because of the deportation flights? Can you imagine what's going on in this world? Trump campaign accelerating the climate crisis as officials move migrants to detention cells and deport them from the U.S. This is a real article just published. In 2026, U.S. immigration enforcement flights are producing hundreds of thousands of metric tons of climate damaging carbon emissions as officials shuttle unprecedented numbers of people to detention centers far from home and deport them to the countries across the world. Donald Trump's mass deportation campaign has spurred 80% increase in such flights year over year. We have an 80% increase in the flights. And you're sitting here wondering why they're burning in Europe, why the heat wave, why the bees are dying, and why the glaciers are sensitive. Trump is deporting people, and it's burning emissions. Think of the emissions. You could have had a peaceful week. If you're in Europe right now, you could have had a peaceful weekend. Meanwhile, you have a heat wave. It's all the jet fuel coming out of those airplanes. It's burning up everyone in Europe. God have mercy on us. Please help. We need help. Trump keeps deporting people, and it keeps getting hotter everywhere we go. This cannot stand. It has to stop. Get Trump to reconsider. Every single person he deports raises the temperature that much, right? You heard about it. It used to be in the old days, we would say, because of that movie, the one from Christmas, right, with Jimmy Stewart, and they would say, every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. From now on, every time we deport one of these immigrants, it gets hotter. We're all going to die. We can't do this anymore. We can't do it anymore. Gotta stop. Gotta stop. He's killing everything. Killing everything. This is real, guys. Big problems. Big problems. All of these jets. You can't deport people. Think of what it would do to the environment. Think about what it's going to do to the environment. Crazy. Reckless government. Reckless. Fascist. Hitlerian. We love it. Plebinator now. Greta's not happy. Plebinator says blowing up oil wells is good for the environment. Setting oil fields on fire is green. What does Ed Gallerin think about the oil fires? Is he pro? I don't care about the environment, BTC Plebinator. Shut the fuck up about oil wells. What are you talking about? Oil wells. I think you're having a stroke, BTC Plebinator. I don't think it's going well for you. You're worried about oil wells in the Middle East burning? Get Thomas Massey on the job. Come on. He's got the ball. He said the ballroom isn't worth it, Thomas. Go talk about the oil wells burning. We need you, Kentucky congressman, to save the world. We need all the Kentucky congressmen on the job. We can't get anywhere. We need it. So this one is, I talk a lot about putting some of these up in the Louvre or something. One day, have a bit of a museum to NPC news. This one is classic, right? You need this one. This is just perfect. This couldn't be better. This could not be better. We love it. Yes, indeed. We get this. This is the Ed Gallerin story again, right? Just like Thomas Massey. He spent years building the GOP. Then MAGA tore him down. It's like this story too. Culture wars versus real wars. Experts say Trump made Texas Senate race a battle the GOP didn't need to fight. Guys, you didn't need to fight that. You don't need voter ID. What a dumb idea. It's fine. He was building the GOP. He's building the GOP. He was just out there building. He had a little hammer. I'm going to build GOP. This is going great. Yay. No ID for voting. We don't need that. I'm building the GOP, bros. Come on. Let me build the GOP. It's going fine. Trump's retribution tour seeks new, more loyal MAGA guard. What was the retribution for? Axios? Anybody? What was the retribution for? Any mention of the retribution in this article? What's it for? Why is there retribution in the first place? What's going on here? We don't know. We don't need to know. It's just a retribution tree. He's just angry. Experts warn Trump's Iran demands risk global instability. No way. The world was just so stable. And stupid Trump comes along, doesn't listen to Thomas Massey, and now the world is risking global instability. What about the Kentucky congressman? He was there for stability. What happened to that? What happened? Precondition controversy. This is all about the Abraham Accord stuff. Oh no, the European Central Bank. Oh no, they're upset. They're upset. Global instability. The European Central Bank warns the Iran war. Oh no. Oh no. I think they're worried about the oil wells, the global warming and the oil wells in the Middle East is globally unstable. What are we going to do if the glaciers get even more sensitive? What are we going to do? We got to ask Brian Stelter. Brian, what do we do about the European banks? We need, they're burning oil wells in the Middle East. The oil wells are going on fire. They're on fire. We got major problems. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? That's what's going on. That is what is going on. All right. So we'll get into that in a second. I need another sip of coffee, and then I'm going to change the system that I have. I don't like it. I'm doing the one that makes me change pages every time I change pages, and I don't get to control it. 1 second. Sometimes you got to hit the punchlines on these NPC news stories, you know? That's it. There we go. So indeed, we had Trump yesterday. Trump yesterday was doing, you know, this thing that he does that I like a lot. It's the cabinet meetings where he brings everyone and they all take turns with their talking points, and it's an excellent format. It really is made for TV, just Trump theater all the way, all the time. And it's a pretty interesting format. So yesterday he came out and again said the following, and I'll show it to you. Hopefully now this time it works the way I want it to work. Maybe not. We'll find out. I'm looking for, there it is. Yes, this should work. This should work, and we should get the audio as well. So here he is, and here Trump mentions what's going on. I'll play the audio, but the important part here is he's talking about what they're going to give, and of course, I continue to think it's the uranium. We'll talk about that in a minute, but here's his update.
Well, I think we're doing very well. I think they're starting to give us the things that they have to give us, and if they do, that's great, and if they won't, then the man on my left is going to finish them off.
Is there a time frame in your mind?
What?
Is there a time frame in your mind for?
I mean, it happens quickly. The problem is every time I mention a time frame, for instance, I see, you know, we've been doing this for a few months. Vietnam lasted 19 years. Korea lasted 8 years. Afghanistan lasted many years. They were all many, many years, and we're into it for a few months. And I read about you people like you. What's taking so long? But we're in it. You know, we lost between two big wars, Venezuela and Iran. We lost 13 souls, 13 great people. Met the parents, great people. And it's a terrible thing, but 13. If you look at the war casualties and the deaths in wars from Vietnam and all that, they lost hundreds.
Okay, well, I don't want to get into all that. It's the point about getting what they want. And again, that's why I think things boiling down to just the uranium is important, because the uranium is a part of what we're going to talk about in a minute, but we're going to talk about the persuasion game that can play around this uranium and sourcing of the uranium and what it means. But turning, you know, one of the interesting things he was talking about yesterday was the economic part and the Abraham Accords part. So here's Zeneb Rubia with a pretty good frame on it. She says, Trump's statements today on Saudi Arabia deserve more attention than they're getting. And a few things are worth keeping in mind. One, Operation Epic Fury has two dimensions, one military and the other economic. So As I've been saying for a long time, World War III, of course, is an economic war, first and foremost, psychological and economic war. And the economic components of it here continue to be the most important factor, as far as I can tell, in understanding what's going on in the Middle East. If you ignore all of the economic factors, the Abraham Accords, which are an economic framework, the Board of Peace, which is an economic framework, the economic fury, the epic fury itself, part of that. But seeing it as this economic frame, with the insurance, all of that is really important to understand what's going on. Now that a ceasefire is in place, the economic campaign continues, and it's a very important one. I explain the economic damage on Iran's economy here. She does that. Destroying missile stockpiles produces battlefield results, but ensuring the IRGC cannot reconstitute those stockpiles produces structural damage. And that is precisely what the U.S. is now pursuing through sanctions enforcement and loophole closure. The parallel sanctions pressure on China carries real weight as well, since it makes Beijing realize that helping Iran has cost. I wrote about it here. On the Gulf, the question of whether the UAE and Saudi Arabia see eye to eye on every matter is, from a U.S. strategic point of view, largely besides the point. What Washington needs is a region capable of guarding its own neighborhood, with Israel integrated into the architecture given its unmatched military capabilities. I think that Trump is right now using this ceasefire moment to extract concessions from Riyadh that no previous administration managed to secure. Keep in mind that Saudi Arabia has been building a new coalition with Turkey and Pakistan to counterbalance the UAE and the Abraham Accord countries, which is a legitimate play. At a minimum, however, all of these actors share a common interest in containing Iran. There is already a lot of work with, since Gulf countries are, a lot to work with since Gulf countries are all working with CENTCOM and Israel. And the shared interest is the entire strategic outcome of what Operation Epic Fury was meant to produce. And that strategic outcome, you can already hear and understand a little more of it, because Trump yesterday put out another note. And this shows more and more what this whole question is about. And so here he says, Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan of Armenia, a great friend and leader, is making his country strong, wealthy, and very secure. Nicole completely shares my vision of peace and prosperity for Armenia and the entire South Caucasus region. Our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, just traveled to Armenia, where he advanced several important deals for both our countries. Soon, the United States and Armenia will break ground together on the Trump route for international peace and prosperity. That's more or less the Silk Road being reconstituted. That's more or less a direct competitor to the Belt and Road in China and all of this economic integration of land-based empires, land-based countries. And with our wonderful American Energies company gain access from Central Asia all the way to the United States. Central Asia to the United States. I've been telling you for weeks now, and I mentioned it yesterday. I will continue to mention it because I think I'm the only person in the world predicting this. I don't think there's anyone else in the world predicting it, which is that they're going to build a physical bridge between Alaska and Siberia. And there really will be a route for energy that will go from Central Asia to the United States. And so this physical infrastructure mimicking a re-coordination of economic infrastructure is a really important story here, which is what the Abraham Accords are all about. Tying places up together financially and economically will keep them at peace. And so that's what's going on here. For these reasons, Nicol has my complete and total endorsement for re-election on June 7th, 2026. With Nicole's help, we will bring the United States, Armenia, and the South Caucasus and Central Asia together. And here we see from Observing Consciousness, Trump just dropped another massive systems level marker hiding inside what many will dismiss as a routine endorsement. Armenia sits on one of the most strategic civilizational crossroads on Earth. The South Caucasus connect the Black Sea, Caspian, Central Asia, Turkey, Iran, Russia, Europe, energy corridors, rail corridors, fiber corridors, military corridors, and emerging AI infrastructure corridors, all through the same compressed geographic spine. Then Trump says American energy companies will gain access from Central Asia all the way to the United States, and the entire message detonates into something much larger. Because this is a corridor warfare transforming into corridor sovereignty, pipelines, LNG, rare earth movement, digital infrastructure, logistics harmonization, and manufacturing flow, all rerouting into a new geopolitical architecture being constructed outside the old City of London controlled dependency grid that dominated global trade, insurance, finance, and maritime leverage for generations. Just a second. The phrase Trump root for international peace and prosperity sounds simple until you understand peace itself is being framed as infrastructure stabilization. So that was part of our title today. What did I call the show today? Something about rails of peace or the fix for America's financial plumbing. Yeah, I'll get to that. But it is an infrastructure theme. Armenia becomes the bridge node sitting between collapsing legacy control systems and the emergence of a new continental trade spine linking Malaysia, the Gulf states, the Caucasus, and the West. Rubio traveling there personally advances the signal even further. Because this level of public language almost always flows years of quiet negotiations already moving beneath the surface, Iran negotiations, ... Gulf normalization, ... Turkey balancing East and West, ... BRICS expansion, ... tariff restructuring, ... sovereign manufacturing, energy realignment, all of it converges in the same larger pattern. Trump keeps speaking in broad theatrical terms while describing the construction of an entirely new global operating system underneath the surface. The map itself is beginning to reorganize around sovereign corridors instead of controlled choke points. So I'll tell you a brief story related to this. As many of you know, I moved to France in the days after 9/11. I was a college student at the time. And so when I arrived in Paris, I, just like anyone, walked around and toured around. It was my first time ever in Paris. I had about 4 or 5 days in Paris before I checked in at school, where I went in the Alps. And so I was walking around, and I think I was probably by the Eiffel Tower, and I met a pamphleteering guy. He was sending out pamphlets. And I've told you this story many times. Before I moved to France and before I was in college, I worked in a furniture factory. Between junior college and university, I took a bit of a break from school for a semester. So not a year, but one semester. And I worked in a furniture factory, and it was mostly Romanians there. And so I learned all about the Illuminati, because they were coming from the other side of the Iron Curtain. They knew all the stuff about the Rothschilds. I didn't know any of this stuff, fluoride in the water. I literally didn't know any of it. At first, I thought they were nuts, but I became closer and closer with them, and I started to understand what they were talking about after a certain time. And so I knew a lot about the City of London. They taught me about the City of London, the vaccine program for AIDS. None of the stuff, all the stuff I thought was real, I was learning very quickly wasn't. And so I was looking up all this stuff on the internet in the 90s. I worked for that. I worked with them in 1999. That was the year. And so I was looking up all this stuff back then. I was worried about spies even then. So I would go on like libraries and stuff and look it up on library internet connections. Whoa. And it was all interesting stuff. And so when I was in Paris this time, I met someone who was pamphleteering, and it turned out he was Canadian. And first of all, he was saying, well, Canada is probably the stupidest. I'd never heard anyone say that before. He said, Canada is probably the stupidest country in the world. And I was like, what do you mean? I didn't understand that. And, he explained to me that Canada, basically what we've come to understand today. But he was the first person who laid out this whole City of London, get rid of the Silk Road. He said the whole scam of the City of London was to break the Silk Road because it was a land-based trade network and it wouldn't fit with what they were building with their maritime system. And so I'd never heard that. And he was out there. That's what the pamphlet was about. The pamphlet was saying that 9/11, the whole thing, can be avoided. All peace in the Middle East can be created through a reemergence of the Silk Road, getting away from this London city system, from this financialized Wall Street system. I never heard anyone describe that before. And so, he was kind of a nut. He was a young guy though. He was my age and handsome guy, like a good looking guy. He didn't look like a typical crazy. And so I ended up spending like an hour with the guy just because I knew enough that I could keep up with what he was talking about. And I had never even understood the Silk Road was a thing. That to this day, when the Silk Road launched, the Ross Ulbricht Silk Road, I always thought about that conversation because I had never understood that perhaps the Silk Road was destroyed in order to create this sick empire out of the city of London. And so when the Belt and Road Initiative from China came up, I said, this is a real plan. And I met with a bunch of Belt and Road people when I was going to China more regularly in the early Bitcoin days, and was always very interested in the whole plan. I even got involved for a little while on a Belt and Road Initiative, which was a sort of gambit by an early Bitcoiner to bake the whole world into the Silk Road or the Belt and Road architecture, but using Hong Kong legal system as the node, which would force everyone into a common law, not Chinese law framework. This was before the deportation and security law in 2019 and all that came into effect. So he lost. I haven't heard from this guy since. He's had to go and disappear. He was an early Bitcoiner who was actually the guy who helped set up the internet naming conventions before. He brought the internet to the he was the original internet provider of Hong Kong. Like, he created a private business and was the initial internet provider. So became so rich and was so rich that I get, what's it called again? It's the thing that sets up like the naming conventions. I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, he set up the naming conventions for the internet, like .com and .ca and whatever. But he got into Bitcoin really early and set up the Scaling Bitcoin conferences. That's how I got to know him, because I was involved in the Scaling Bitcoin conferences. He was a local Hong Kong fella. And early Bitcoiner, wasn't even able to have a telephone in Hong Kong in 2016 because he was getting spied on so much. It wouldn't work for him. So very interesting. DNS, it's not DNS. It's not just domain name stuff. It's got a bigger international organization name to it. I can't remember what it's called now, all of a sudden. More than domain names. Yeah, it was more than domain names. It was it's got like one of these OCPP something acronyms. You'll all know it right away. It's very famous and his name is Pindar Wong, if you want to look him up. Pindar Wong. And Pindar, so I got involved in his Belt and Road Initiative because it was a Bitcoin based, common law based. He was running this gambit to force everyone. ICANN, yes, the ICANN, yes, precisely, ICANN. He set up ICANN. Yes, he set up ICANN. So he was trying to set up a thing where you'd be forced, if you wanted to engage with China, through the Hong Kong system, which he thought was going to be the way to organize this stuff. So very interesting fella. Nolan Gen X hacking in the public library. Exactly, T-Dog. Yo. Exactly. So seeing Trump reset this system, I think, going back to that conversation that I've never forgotten, right? The first time I'd ever heard anyone insult Canada, probably in my life, I'd probably never heard anyone say seriously that Canada is full of retards. I'd never heard that before. And I remember being shocked by it. Like, no, that's not, Canada can't be the dumbest place in the world. Here we are 25 years later, and I am the number one evangelist telling you that Canada is the stupidest country in the world. There's no place dumber than Canada. There just isn't. I know those Australians and New Zealanders try hard, and yes, they're retarded. Yes, they are. It's true. I'm not going to take that away from them, but nowhere near Canada. I mean, Canada is... it's the Wayne Gretzky of retardation, and there's nowhere else like it. It's the Michael Jordan of these failed countries. Mark Carney is our great example of it. So seeing this architecture come in and seeing all these changes, to me, I think is a great way to understand it. And here's James E. Thorne talking about much the same thing, saying, speaking of not dumb Canadians. So that's the great thing about Canada. We are the dumbest country in the world, no doubt about it. But because it's so retarded, it produces amazing people from time to time. And I'm beginning to think James E. Thorne is one of them. And so I've got two James E. Thorne threads today. He says, food for thought. And this is much the same of what we heard from this Belt and Road stuff, much of what we heard from Zeneb Rubio as well about economically tying the area in together. And he says, Trump's Abraham Gambit is the new great game. Halford Mackinder, not the United Nations, is the man to have in mind when looking at Trump's Iran diplomacy. He says Mackinder understood that history belongs to those who organize the world island, Europe, Asia, and Africa, with the Middle East as the hinge, not to those who moralize about it from conference calls. Add Sun Tzu and Kipling's Kim, and the picture sharpens. The great struggles are won by those who quietly redraw the map and deny their adversaries the ground they once took for granted. Trump, whatever his critics say, is trying to do exactly that. That is why he has inserted the Abraham Accords into the center of the Iran talks. This is not decoration on a nuclear file. It is the strategy. Widen the Abraham framework, pull more Arab and Muslim states into open alignment with Israel, and force Tehran to face a region that is becoming harder to intimidate and harder to hold hostage through Hormuz panic or nuclear brinkmanship. For 40 years, the West treated Iran as a technical problem, counting centrifuges and tweaking sanctions, while Iran built a business model of proxy war, maritime extortion, and standing risk premium every time the Strait of Hormuz flashed red. This was its version of the great game, a quiet mastery of chaos and choke points, while Western diplomats congratulated themselves on process. Trump's answer is to make the model obsolete. Israel, the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan form the Abraham core, with Saudi Arabia as the decisive prize, while Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, Turkey, and Pakistan are pressed toward a more openly pro-Accords camp. On the periphery sit Japan and China, both with immense stakes in the energy routes and trade corridors that run through this game geography. In a sense, the Abraham framework is a Middle Eastern echo of the old Helsinki Accords, economic cooperation and security guarantees used to buy stability, but without a single distant empire calling every shot and without pretending the abstract process is a substitute for hard power. This is strategy in the old sense. Change the terrain, align the coalition, and deny the adversary the fractured landscape on which he thrives. If it works, the Middle East stops being where growth goes to die every time Tehran rattles Hormuz and becomes the connective tissue of a harder, more productive order, a coherent zone across Mackinder's world island, tied together not by slogans, but by ports, pipelines, grids, shipping lanes, and capital disciplined by security. Investors need to wake up. The rules of the game are changing in real time. The old world is not coming back. A new great game is underway, and the prize is no longer territory, but the authority to price risk and allocate capital across the world island. Those still trading on the assumptions of the previous era are not positioning for the future. They're underwriting decline and clinging to a map history that is already marked obsolete. And here they put the beginning of World War I into context. Of course, you just heard about what Trump was building in Armenia, and that sits in this map. So you're starting to see this stuff all play out, and you're seeing the incentive realignment, which is exactly why Trump yesterday went into, once you do this physical reshaping, you've got to also change the financial rails and the plumbing with it, so that this new physical infrastructure, just like the Belt and Road, just like the Silk Road, they all had their own financial system that was embedded into the physical infrastructure. That's what China was trying for with the Belt and Road, and it looks like it's going to get built in a different direction, because that's why simultaneous to this new physical infrastructure going in, we're seeing the Bitcoin and crypto architecture and infrastructure getting put in as well. Remember, it's what I've been saying for a long time, that Iran was infrastructure, that the Abraham Accords are infrastructure, and you have to see this as infrastructure. If you don't see it as, and Epstein was infrastructure, that was infrastructure, right? That was how the system worked. And you need new infrastructure if you're going to create these new financial relationships. And here, that's why Gary Gensler and the anti-crypto army nearly destroyed the American crypto industry by driving Bitcoin, crypto perpetuals, and innovation offshore. By crypto perpetuals, that really starts with the Bitcoin perpetual markets, which were an innovation in derivatives markets that only came from Bitcoin originally. That's what BitMEX was using. It's one of the great innovations that happened in financial markets when it comes to Bitcoin. So, in normie markets when it comes to Bitcoin. But Trump saved it. America is now the crypto capital of the world, and builders and entrepreneurs are coming back to the United States where they belong. Under my leadership, we will codify a future-proof digital asset market structure that cannot be undone by the crypto haters. The new frontier of finance is being built in America, and Trump will never let crypto down. President Donald J. Trump. And that's why here Observing Consciousness has a note on this post, says Trump post decode. Gary Gensler represented the final enforcement layer of the dying fiat regulatory order, attempting to suffocate the birth of decentralized financial sovereignty before it could mature into a civilization scale operating system. That's what we're doing. It's an operating system. That's why this is important. This plumbing, this infrastructure is not just it's not just schematics. This is reality. This is why I've created all these whiteboards before, telling you that fiat is a representation of reality and that it conjures a reality out of the plumbing. And that's why I talk about propaganda. That's why I talk about the nature of the money being government debt. And if the nature of the money is government debt, then in order for it to have credibility, it needs propaganda. Propaganda is the credibility and belief system that goes into it. That's why I've been painting that picture for so long. Many Bitcoiners know this, but now you're seeing it come into reality as the new infrastructure is getting built and we start talking about the projection of reality and the civilizational scale operating systems. This was never about protecting investors. It was about protecting legacy power concentration sitting on top of SWIFT, central bank leverage, offshore liquidity control, debt-based monetary expansion, and institutional gatekeeping that extracts value at every layer of human productivity. The SEC crackdown created regulatory fog thick enough to push developers, exchanges, liquidity providers, and infrastructure builders offshore, while America deliberately crippled itself during the largest technological financial transition since the creation of the Federal Reserve itself. Meanwhile, sovereign competitors quietly accumulated talent, compute infrastructure, digital custody systems, blockchain settlement frameworks, stablecoin experimentation, and AI integrated financial tooling beneath the noise. Trump's post is effectively declaring that phase over. America is now openly entering the race to dominate the rails underneath the next economic civilization. The phrase future-proof digital asset market structure carries enormous weight if you understand systems dynamics. Civilizations are controlled through rails. Trade rails, energy rails, currency rails, information rails, identity rails, and settlement rails. Whoever owns the rails underneath value transfer ultimately shapes the flow of global power itself. Crypto evolved far beyond speculative assets years ago. It is now merging with AI, sovereign data infrastructure, energy grids, tokenized real-world assets, automated settlements, supply chain verification, machine-to-machine commerce, and programmable governance architecture. Think Genesis mission, Genesis stack. This is why the old guard panics so violently, because blockchain-based settlement threatens entire layers of institutional extraction that sit between humans and value. They all understand it. Banks, central banks, City of London, the CCP, and BlackRock understood in a second they provided toward ETF integration after years of public hostility. Trump's message signals that America intends to pull the builders, liquidity, infrastructure, and codified legal framework back inside U.S. jurisdiction before the next financial operating system permanently consolidates elsewhere. The real battlefield was never Bitcoin itself. The battlefield was control of the architecture that comes after fiat saturation, after infinite debt expansion, and after centralized financial mediation loses its grip on the velocity of human exchange. And that's why this is happening. And that's why you see all of this stuff that we're seeing right now, and why all of this is happening simultaneous is not a mistake. And just to let you guys all know, if you have any children today, so they say here tomorrow, the White House reminding us Trump accounts on your phone, manage everything, watch the growth all in one place. Adam Townsend here reminding everyone, please enroll in this, and please also let everybody, friends, family, strangers you encounter with young kids or who might have young kids to enroll. So I know there are some new parents here who like to watch the show. Do not forget, today's the day. Get your Trump account. We got the Trump Root for Peace, and we got the Trump accounts. We got a new system coming. Go and get all the tax advantages and whatever else is coming from these investment accounts. You can get it today. Maybe you'll get some free money. Not sure what's going on, but go for it. I'm going to find out if my kids qualify at all. So again, thinking about this changing system and these rails and the reality in all of this stuff, we have to see that this new system that we're talking about, this changing rails, changing reality, Trump investment accounts, Trump Root for Peace, all of the Abraham Accords, the commercial integration, the reinvigoration of something like the Silk Road, all of it is changing this reality. And you're seeing now many people start to talk about what this means, because Keynes more than ever is coming under view and scrutiny, because we're going back now. As I told you, we'd be investigating, reinterpreting history as we move forward through this change. We're going to go back and understand the conditions in which these things happened. And here I've got a few things on Keynesianism, because that's exactly what's changing. And James E. Thorne with another thread here saying, food for thought. Yes, Wall Street is living in the past. Yes, Wall Street still has TDS and is still living in a Keynesian secular stagnation, slow growth, post-great financial collapse past. Wall Street is determined to miss the story in front of its face. Rather than recognizing that we have entered an era of historic earnings growth, the default take is the lazy one. If prices are high and tech is leading, it must be a bubble. That view reduces everything to valuation optics and 1999 flashbacks. It ignores the numbers. The Magnificent Seven went into Q1 with an expected earnings growth rate of 22.5% and still delivered 63.2% actual earnings growth, their fastest since Q2 2021, when they grew 89.2%. The other 493 S&P 500 companies, allegedly just passengers in a mania, posted 17.4% earnings growth, their best since Q4 2021, when they printed 32.3%. These are not bubble statistics, they are regime shift statistics. In a bubble, earnings miss and stories beat. Here it is the reverse. 100% of the Magnificent Seven beat EPS expectations versus 84%, blah, blah, blah. The punchline Wall Street refuses to confront is simple. Analysts are not cutting numbers into strength. They are chasing them higher. Full year 2026 growth expectations have been revised up for both the Mag 7 and the other 493. That is not how bubbles behave. Bubbles are when valuations levitate while earnings stall or roll over. What we are seeing is valuations adjusting to an earnings stream that is breaking to new highs, the start of an earnings super cycle, not the end of a mania. The deeper problem is that Wall Street is using the wrong toolkit. Its models are calibrated to a Keynesian post-crisis slow growth world, low productivity, weak capex, earnings that grind higher by a few percent a year. Confronted with an AI-driven supply-side capex heavy profit boom, those models have only one answer when prices rise. It must be a bubble. Yes, Wall Street still has TDS. They live in a Keynesian secular stagnation, slow growth past. Don't be surprised if we start getting they must be cooking the books narrative next. So don't be surprised if that happens. We'll look in on that prediction. The facts say something else. The framework is obsolete, the models are wrong, and the market is repricing an earnings regime that Wall Street still hasn't admitted has changed. So more or less, this Keynesian thing is over, and that's why we're going back to understand about Keynes and Promethean action. Actually, a video yesterday on this. They talked about the end of Keynesianism. They talked about regime change. So just think about all of this stuff. Physical infrastructure getting changed, financial operating system getting changed, Keynesianism coming under question. This is a total and complete regime change. Here's Barbara Boyd talking about it yesterday. I'll see if I can get the audio. Maybe I'll have to redo it. But you're seeing this reinterpretation now of Keynes, and it is exactly what Bitcoiners have hoped for. We've been understanding and learning about Keynes and all the evil that he did for a long time, and we're finally starting to reinterpret history in a way that mimics the worldview of Bitcoiners, because this is civilizational change. This is what we're talking about. We're changing reality here.
NBC's Squawk Box, Judy Shelton outlined the fight to put the Federal Reserve on an American system footing for the first time in recent history. Let's listen.
Well, I think we need to abandon this very old Keynesian idea that economic growth is inflationary and that having low unemployment is inflationary. When you have strong economic growth and it's productive activity that increases economic output, you're increasing supply. So even if consumer demand goes up, you're battling inflation by meeting that demand with the increased output. And the Fed sees it the opposite way. The Fed says all we can do is crush demand with restrictive interest rates.
Did you hear that? We need to abandon the Keynesian idea that economic growth is inflationary. Expanding real physical production and raising workers' wages is not inflationary. It's what beats inflation. She made the same argument in Friday's Wall Street Journal. Shelton isn't just criticizing Fed policy. She's declaring that the entire framework governing world finance since August 15th, 1971 is dead wrong. And she's doing it in the same week Kevin Warsh was sworn in to conduct regime change at the Fed. Now, Donald Trump nominated Judy Shelton to the Fed in his first term, but Senate rhinos blocked her. She has campaigned relentlessly for a new Bretton Woods, low interest rates, stable exchange rates, supporting physical productivity and rising real wages. It's not accidental. She's leading the financial press now for Trump and Warsh's reforms at the Fed. The Fed has been London and Wall Street's choke point on the U.S. economy since its founding. Trump, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and Warsh are removing that choke point, reining the Fed in and creating alternative credit through the Treasury Department. Meanwhile, Trump's outreach to Russia, China, India, and Japan foreshadows a new Bretton Woods. I'm Barbara Boyd, and I've been in this fight against British imperial stock. Now, these are my cliff notes, if you will, to Will Wurtz's excellent class on Bretton Woods for Promethean Action on May 2nd. You should watch the whole class if you want to get the full picture. It's July 1944. 730 delegates from 44 nations are meeting at the Mount Washington Hotel in New Hampshire. Roosevelt has already told Churchill that after the war, Americans will dismantle the British Empire's colonial system and help the world develop using the American methods perfected in wartime. Roosevelt's man here, Harry Dexter White. On the British side, John Maynard Keynes, economist, celebrity, aristocrat, a Malthusian and genetics freak who admitted in the German edition of his general theory that Hitler's Germany was a better environment for his ideas than the West's freedom-based systems. He called the conference a monkey show because of the Indians, Africans, South Americans, and Chinese present.
Monkey show.
Keynes planned the Bancor, an international currency controlled by a supranational central bank with debtors like Britain given automatic credit lines and creditors like the U.S. forced to drain their reserves. A system designed to let Britain keep extracting and keep financing its empire on American credit. Think about Mark Carney's 2019 Jackson Hole proposal for a synthetic world currency to replace the dollar.
Synthetic
and his current plans
hegemonic
to
world
mobilize
currency.
the middle nations against the U.S. and China. The carbon copy is not accidental. Roosevelt's plan, the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency backed by gold, fixed exchange rates, capital controls to stop speculative flows from gutting.
So that was the old system, but there you go. And this is what they want. We're not going to get exactly this, but a dollar reserve currency backed by Bitcoin looks like what we're building. And again, go back to this idea that the Federal Reserve was this, choke point system. Well, first I'll just mention this. She goes on to talk about some of these the central bank now created, or development bank that's been created inside of the military. Um, so there's a new development bank. Basically, they'll give out loans and stuff like that. And here, this is a bit of an update on it. This is some appointments that happened yesterday. 33 appointments to the Science, Tech, and Innovation Board. So this will be a big factor in how some of this money is doled out to contractors. It looks like the American government's going to be investing in drone makers now. A bunch of drone stocks went wild yesterday on this speculation. See some great names here, though. Joshua Steinman, others all being named. 33 names have been added to the board. I don't know a lot of them, but I recognize some of them, and that's one of the ones that I definitely recognize. So a bunch of people joining this board, part of what's going on here, part of this shift. But going back to the choke point that was the Federal Reserve, the beachhead of this City of London architecture that was used to suppress American growth and all of that. And I said for a long time we'd be looking into the history of World War I again, and that we're going to be reinterpreting the history of World War I as it flows out of this banking Keynesianism story. Like, what set that whole world up? And here you're starting to see more and more. These are some interesting books. The Secret Origins of the First World War, Hidden History. And you can see it's exactly what we're talking about here. The history of the First World War is a deliberately concocted lie. A secret society of rich and powerful men was established in London in 1891 with the long-term aim of taking control of the entire world. These men, the secret elite, deliberately fomented the Boer War to grab Transvaal's gold mines, and this became the template for everything that followed. They plotted the destruction of Germany for 10 years. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand was no chance happening. It lit a fuse that had been carefully set through a chain of command stretching from Sarajevo through Belgrade and St. Petersburg. Again, why Trump going to Armenia and this part of the world is important, because it's all of these physical binds that created this situation in the first place. So they go on to describe Rothschild, Rhodes, everything they did. These men ran their own show. They pulled in King Edward VII as their loyal frontman, Sir Edward Grey. Cecil Rhodes made his millions robbing South Africa's diamond fields and gold mines. The Rothschild dynasty underwrote it all. The book spells it out. They burned farms, herded women and children into concentration camps, with more than 20,000 kids died. Alfred Milner sneered, "Disregard the screamers," and shipped in Chinese slave labor at 25 cents a day to restart the gold mines. And here we see that, of course, the Rothschilds financed the Suez Canal. That's where this infrastructure goes in, guys. That's where the end of the Silk Road really was. It was the Suez Canal, the Strait of Hormuz, this whole maritime empire that came out of it. The official story you were taught is a fabrication stitched together at Versailles in 1919 and guarded ever since. The book states it plainly. Britain, not Germany, was responsible for the war. Germany's invasion of Belgium was a forced reaction to the noose the secret elite had tightened around her. The Entente Cordiale with France and the secret deal with Russia were designed to encircle and provoke Germany. They manufactured crises in Morocco and the Balkans. They knew Austria would hit Serbia. Russia would mobilize. Germany would be forced to defend herself. Documents were burned, shredded, or vanished from the Foreign Office. Historians were fed the fairy tale of German aggression and accidental war. The truth that millions were sacrificed so a tiny clique could rule the world would have been cataclysmic for the British establishment if it came out after 1918. The book doesn't speculate. It quotes letters, wills, diaries, parliamentary records, and the glaring holes where evidence was deliberately destroyed. The same men who started the Boer War scaled it up to global slaughter, then rewrote the history books. The money is traced. The lies are exposed. The war that killed 20 million wasn't an accident. It was cold, premeditated act by men who believed they had the divine right to own the planet and made sure the rest of humanity paid for it in blood. That's what we understand. And that's why seeing this news today, the CIA got caught with 40 million in gold bars. Oh, what he must have been corrupted. Nope. Understand that if you ever research the CIA, it wouldn't surprise it at all. You at all. The CIA does their own vetting. The entire operations director spends a small fortune uncovering covers, creating covers, keeping fake mailboxes, companies' emails for cover stories. This guy saved them a lot of money. He came with his own covers. As far as the gold, you haven't seen anything. They ran $1 trillion narco weapons trafficking per year operations. And here, Brian Cates, you do realize on the same CIA gold story from yesterday that one of the key reasons the CIA has been aiding, abetting, participating in, helping the transnational crime syndicate of London conglomerate Hydra to rig the US elections, especially since the end of World War II, it is to help cover up the fact that almost all our entire federal government is a massive money laundering machine. To keep the fraud and the money laundering of the stolen money going since the 1950s, the CIA has been rigging/controlling US elections. They have front companies everywhere. NBC News is selling a cover narrative as if this is fucking guy tricked the CIA or something. That's not how it happened. What he was exposed and they cut him loose. And just like in the fucking Mission Impossible films, when one of their agents gets captured, they deny all knowledge of his activities. The fraud and the money laundering has grown to the point that they have been stealing north of $1 trillion every year. It looks like a lot of NGOs and front companies and disguised money laundering fronts pretending to be federal agencies to move that much cash. You need a lot of people in the network to keep the fraud moving. This guy looks like he is one of them. And that's what we're seeing with all these fraud investigations. We're seeing the whole thing come out. That's why Venezuela was that. Remember we talked about Venezuela? Why Venezuela? Well, it was another one of these places, just like Iran, just like North Korea, just like Syria was, just like Afghanistan was. You find these broken down countries and you use the sovereign envelope in order to hide and do all of this stuff and keep the money laundering game going. That's why the fraud stuff in Minnesota has got Besant on it. And that's why the international stuff has Besant on it as well with economic fury, because this is a financial war. This is an infrastructure and financial war. The rails determine reality in the end. That's why I created all of those whiteboards comparing reality projection to rails and physical energy and news information systems. And that's why, the Venezuela thing has led directly to Dirty Sanchez and his troubles, right? So that's how we got all this. What's going on in Spain is exactly this stuff, right? Spanish anti-corruption police raid the headquarters of PM Pedro Sanchez's socialist PSOE. Too bad it's not the POS, right? The piece of shit party. The agents were sent to secure evidence for an ongoing probe into an alleged illegal financing of the country's ruling party. So, I mean, what are the chances you think this guy's corrupt? Everyone is due their day in court, I guess, right? But we're seeing all of this influence campaign, all the money and the projection of reality, all of that stuff is coming out again. And it's still related to energy. That's why we're paying attention more and more to this astroturfed political fight about the AI data centers, right? So we're seeing here, of course, Hassan Piker with his trouble now. So this guy, Sam Lyman here, was a former Besant staffer. So he used to write speeches for Besant. Now he is the head of research at the BTC Policy Institute. So the guy who went from, I hung out with him in Vegas, by the way. So the guy who went from writing Besant speeches is now here showing you where the Anatomy of Influence signed BTC, Bitcoin Policy Institute, Anatomy of an Influence Operation that campaign against American AI. This is a very important thing. You're seeing China here, AOC, Sanders, Billionaire Foreigner Trail, CCP, the Singham Network. We've been talking about the Singham Network here for a while. Here he uncovers what's going on. Hassan Piker singled out the Shanghai-based Neville Singham as the funding vehicle for political agitation here in the United States. This is a huge admission from one of America's biggest podcasters, and it directly corroborates BPI's research on foreign influence in the campaign against American AI. We're seeing it more and more. Here you can see Cremieux saying the same thing. The anti-data center activism is partly funded by China and is certainly supported by it. It is anti-American, and if it succeeds, America loses. And that's, I think, what a lot of people are saying. And here is Sam Lyman again saying, enjoy the video of Neville Singham addressing an audience of Chinese nationals as comrades, as he rails against the American system and calls for a new world order that is based on multilateralism, that President Xi and the CPC and China have proposed. This man is a Marxist, full stop, and yet he funds one of the most influential nonprofit networks here in the United States to the tune of 278 million US trash tokens, all from his comfortable perch in Shanghai. When Singham isn't calling for the overthrow of fascism and US imperialism, his network is fighting tooth and nail to oppose the build out of American AI. Are you starting to see how this works? Says Sam Lyman from the Bitcoin Policy Institute. And this brings up, as we're seeing all these ops, right? I was telling you yesterday to pay attention to the Balaji fight with Roman helmet guy. So I still don't know the story of Balaji. I still think Balaji's a smart guy. I'll wait for the judgment to come out on what's going on. But yesterday, their fights, right? So Balaji and Roman helmet guy really going at it. A lot of people paying attention to it. And here, where did he come up with a really good one? Roman helmet guy did. And there you go. Yes, loyalty to America means serving the American people, insane that you grew up here and can't get that through your skull. I'll remind you once again that the Mayflower Pilgrims didn't leave England. They extended it. As for the Irish, there was no independent country of Ireland in the 1840s. So he goes on, stay and fight. You know, it says my loyalty is to the American. As to which Americans you should have been loyal to, all of them. America is not an ideology. Even the most ideologically deluded idiots are still Americans, and I am happy to embrace all American citizens as my brothers and sisters, regardless of background. But that does not mean we need to accept infinity immigrants forever and give them all the best jobs in the nation. So here, Cernovich goes after him and says, nobody cares that you left. You lost your mind during COVID. And had you got your way, the country would have fallen to China due to your lockdown proposals. People are tired of the pro-CCP slop. You post obsessively and negatively about America. Go enjoy life. We are good here. Also get this from him saying, nobody is mad he left. People are sick of the pro-CCP slop. If he stopped posting obsessively about America, which he did leave, so what exactly is the agenda here? Nobody would care. A lot of people calling him out for this stuff. He pushed COVID the hardest, even to the point of calling people repeatedly to warn them. He did that. He called me and warned me. Okay. Not me personally, but our little board in CoinDesk. And who benefited most from America taking COVIDian posters? Questions for the heavens. It's an obvious info up. Not only are we not mad he left, we want him gone. If Balaji could make me mad, it's because he's wearing American culture like a skin suit to give him legitimacy as a commentator. He's no friend trying to fix things. He's a sheepskin-clad wolf selling freedom from fences. It's an obvious info op. And of course, Adam Townsend was the first to talk about this with us. Again, I'll continue to hear Balaji out. But I will say he was suspiciously over time. Well, let's just say I never believed that so every interaction I've had with him for the past few years is if I invite him to a Bitcoin Magazine event, he'll get back to me and say yes or no. If I ask him for anything else, and I've asked him for a few things over time, right? This and that, it's a no. And I was like, I wonder why he would not. It just didn't make sense to me because I'm in alignment with a lot of his ideas. The internet city thing, or whatever, the breakaway cities. I'm a big fan of the new cities and star-based city in Texas, and that's his network state argument. So, and I don't know if it's exactly what people are saying, but nevertheless, interesting guy. And if it's true and he's getting caught up in an op here, then we'll find out. So here's, speaking now that we get the ops and everything, right? The Hassan Piker thing, Neville Singham, Balaji Srinivasan. So he is in trouble. Glenn Beck bringing it up here. Last year, the FBI knocked on my door to talk about one of my Glenn TV specials. They wanted more information about the organizations funding Antifa, and we provided the receipts. Now, leftist streamer Hassan Piker has been subpoenaed over his recent trip to Cuba, and we'll look at that. He admitted that 1, the Cuban government facilitated the live stream. 2, The exact networks I told the FBI about, Neville, Roy, Singham, PSL, Code Pink, and Answer Coalition, were the real targets behind the subpoena. So we'll find out what's going on. It'll be interesting. But we're seeing all of these ops. Here's another one, right? We're seeing the Reid Hoffman on E. Jean Carroll. So I guess now she's going to be criminally pursued for her scams. E.G. Carroll, of course, the nutbag who said Trump raped her, but there was no proof, and then said it was sexy and she needed sexier pictures of herself, and kind of a nut. And here talking about how she forgot that Reid Hoffman had financed the whole campaign. The moment it's clear E.G. Carroll lied during her deposition in her scam against President Trump, she totally forgot that he paid for it. And here's E. Carroll years ago. Welcome to the Mouse House. She paints trees blue. She's free to do that. That's no problem. But not forget, right? She lives with rodents, names her cat Vagina and her dog Tits. She writes stories about what her dog taught her about sex, claimed on live TV that rape was sexy, and paints trees blue. Emails between her and her friend, who also is a key witness in the case, reveal her talking about the grand scheme to remove Trump from office. She was funded by a billionaire Democrat. Again, this is why we see all of these ops and why fiat and influence and reality projection are all one story. That's why you're seeing all of the disinformation from Iran, from data centers, from China, from Trump's a rapist. It's all the same fiat architecture. It's all the same reality projection. That's why you got to change it all. And that's why it doesn't work also, because the money is broken. That system, the flywheel of fiat reality projection, is breaking very fast. And that's why the propaganda has to go increased overdrive, because it's losing its grip. And we talked about this yesterday, but indeed, just to reiterate, right, this is the Ed Gallerin story again. Is BTC Plebinator still around? All the propaganda, all the tangential Trump criticism filtered through Israel and the Epstein class angle, none of it ever had a real chance. And indeed, just his numbers, absolutely incredible. There is no civil war, Ed Gallerin story. 9 for 9 on Senate, 101 for 101 on the House, and 8 for 8 on the governor. Probably all enough to win in a general too, because the Democrats are not through their civil war, right? They're still going through it. Here's what Trump said, to put a exclamation point, and then we'll talk about the Democrat civil war. He says, "Congratulations to Ken Paxton on such a tremendous win, and to John Cornyn for having run a strong and powerful race, but more importantly, having had a truly great career. John will remain my friend for a long time to come, as we both watch Ken become a fantastic common sense senator, one who is respected by all." Come on. It's worth the Massey losing and all of that just for the laughs. All of this stuff is funny. It's funny. Okay. I'm sorry if you're having trouble with Thomas Massey and the Civil War not being a real thing amongst MAGA and the podcasters having no power. I'm sorry it's not working well. But this is worth it just for the LOLs. John will remain a friend for a long time to come, as we both watch Ken become a fantastic common sense senator, one who's respected by all. And this is the best part of it, right? This is the best. His opponent, Alfred E. Newman, that's the low T Talarisco. He's calling him Alfred E. Newman from Mad Magazine. Maybe the worst Texas candidate I have ever seen. A strong open borders advocate. He is weak on crime, believes there are 6 genders, is insulting to Jesus Christ, will never support the military, was a big mask wearer until recently, and is a vegan who dislikes meat. Not exactly a good way to be if you're wanting to win in an election in Texas. Jasmine Crockett, a very low IQ individual who is no relation to the legendary frontiersman Davy Crockett. What? Come on. Would have been a far, but it's true. I miss Jasmine Crockett. I can't believe she lost to Tallarico. I can't believe it. It's because they used Colbert to prejudice her. Remember, that's a real thing, right? Because you're supposed to give 50% of time to the opponents, and they said, "Oh, we're not going to put a Republican." That wasn't his opponent. His opponent was her. We miss Jasmine Crockett. We want justice for Jasmine. She's our favorite Democrat legislator. We need her back. I think she could have been a great Republican had she just realized, what her future was. Then her IQ would go way up, according to Trump, right? She'd be from central casting in no time. So there you go. Would have been far better choice for the Democrats. I do believe that. I think she had a legitimate shot of winning. Honestly, she's good at what she does. She really is. Dumb, yeah, but that's not the this threshold. Not everyone, Thomas Massey. I'll give him that high IQ. Doesn't get you anywhere in the Senate, or the Congress. You don't need a high IQ. It's not like a high IQ job, right? It's yay or nay. What did the whip tell me to do? And that's it. That's the job right there. Special reserve status if you're a designated liar. If you're willing to lie, then you can do something in the job of congressman in this day and age. I will do some nice, big, beautiful rallies for Ken in Texas. This will be fun. God bless America. So Alfred E. Newman, 6 genders. Come on. Great stuff. So indeed, the Civil War that you can see from Trump ending the Civil War in Republican Party, but this is why Trump's numbers of winning his Civil War so convincingly actually have some play in the general after, because the Democrats are just heading into their Civil War right now. They haven't acknowledged it until now. They don't even really know it's around. You heard a million people, the MAGA Civil War, who's in MAGA, this and that. They're split. Doesn't look split to me. But we're seeing it on the Democrat side more and more. Dems cut ties with scandal-plagued Graham Plattner, warn of civil war in party. So it's starting to happen. The Nazi guy is out in Maine. Dan Goldman, he's one of those congressmen who's one of the designated liars. Just a second. So Dan Goldman is one of those designated liars. If you don't know what Dan Goldman looks like, where is he? Where can I get a Dan Goldman here? Dan Goldman picture. Anyway, he's the heir to the Levi's fortune. Not going well for him either. So this is the Civil War right here. So when you hear the Plattners being left behind, right? Okay, that's part of the Civil War. Now what is the Civil War? What are the factions? Like in the Republicans, it was the Panicans and the podcast people versus the MAGA people, right? So, let me not even deride them for a minute. It was the Tucker Carlson, no foreign war people, okay? Them against Trump's cult. It's a kind of a cult, so I'll give them that. So let me just even reframe it so that I don't seem too biased about it. Trump won that fight. Doesn't matter how you categorize them, right? As those numbers show you. So the different factions in the Democrat Civil War are the Mamdani, AOC, Bernie communists, who have only lost the past 3 elections because they got scammed with the primary system. So the reason why the Obama faction, that's the deep state people, the Hillarys, all these people stay in power, the Adam Schiffs, is because they have such a corrupt hold on the party. And they're starting to lose it now, though. And you're seeing here Adam Schiff's henchmen. So Adam Schiff, who's one of the designated liars, it's only a certain type of congressman that will just go up and straight up lie. It's not all of them. There's not a lot that'll do that. Jasmine Crockett, I don't think she did that. I think she believed most of what she said. Tallarico can do that. He can lie, straight up lie. But Dan Goldman was the best they had of this recent crop with Schiff going to the Senate. And many people called him henchman. So Dan Goldman whipped up the anti-Trump mob with his MSNBC P-tape hysterics. As Adam Schiff's henchman, he tried to overthrow Trump with a bogus impeachment. The Levi Strauss heir then finally bought his seat and continued the rage. Finally, the mob he incited is coming for him by, because it turns out that Brad Ladner is part of this Mamdani world, and he is losing by absolute double-digit margins. We're done with Dan Goldman. No more Dan Goldman. So this is that Civil War, right? And you're seeing it play out throughout. Even, people crying about the communism with Mamdani over there. Well, that's the Civil War. The people who bet on Obama ended up getting the communists because they didn't pay attention to the Civil War. So that's why here, when you see the New York state lawmakers approve the luxury tax, right? Even as a born and raised New Yorker, tough to get worked up about this. Don't care. New York City. I don't care about the New York communism Mamdani thing. As you know, I'm not like a big anti-Mamdani guy. I don't sit around saying, did you hear what the communists said? Mamdani is communist stuff. They got what they asked for. Fuck them. I don't have any patience. I don't care. Get it. You want communism? Go. You got it. It's all yours. I hate to see New York City go to shit, but I ran away from New York City for this reason. I don't need it to come back. In fact, if New York City comes back tomorrow, I'll be like, oh shit, why did I leave? It's just confirmation bias type of thing. So probably somewhere in my subconscious, I'm rooting against New York City because I feel like I was kicked out of there as a refugee. Now, I do love New York and I want the best for it in my conscious mind. If I had to choose, but somewhere deep in me, it's kind of like the Habs winning the cup this year. It's like, well, I'd rather they won it as a Quebec sovereign country than Canada. I don't want Canada saying we won the cup. I want Canada to die and end without another cup. That's fine with me. I'm okay with that. And would love to see Quebec win it in its first year. In Quebec's first year as a sovereign nation, finally out from under the city of London's control, we got to win the cup. If there's any poetry and God in this world, we will win the cup that year, and it will be a great thing. Goldman Sachs went, so this is going back to these people. New York City elites haven't suffered enough from their dumb politics. Goldman Sachs went 13-1 for Harris over Trump in donations. Big Law went 8-1. Play footsie with socialism, get kicked in the nuts. Fuck you guys. See ya. They're losing everywhere. So this is where this civil war and how can the Democrats come together to actually make a difference in the next little while? There's a lot of stories coming. It's always difficult to predict where politics are headed because so many things happen, but even the lawfare is falling apart, right? Mark Elias just losing everywhere. Once again, we beat Elias. Florida's new congressional net maps stand here. Mark Elias, this is the lawyer that did all of the gerrymandering and the rigging of the 2020 election. He's the one. Now, we don't fat shame, right? We don't fat shame. But if you're trying to, because I just spoke about Reid Hoffman, right? So I just spoke about Reid Hoffman. And now I'm talking about Mark Elias. They both have the turkey neck. So I don't want you to get confused who has the big. We'd have to measure. I don't know who has. We'd have to do like a weigh-in with a thing to see who's got the thicker turkey neck. But Mark Elias, he's up there. He's competing with Reid Hoffman in this. But I'm not trying to fat shame him. That's not what's going on. I'm just helping you remember who I'm talking about. Okay. Well, I want you to remember who I'm talking about. And Mark Elias, he's got a lot gobble, right? A lot of gobble going on. No wonder they called Eric Holder in to try to help. Nothing is going to help. We are witnessing the complete destruction of the Democrat Party. Enjoy the show. That's what I'm seeing. I don't know how they're going to push against this stuff. And now the worst part is, right, one of the things that worked for the Democrats for so long, again, lawfare worked, projection of reality worked, fake news. They needed all these tools, right? But the linchpin of it all was the moral high ground, right? They were always, we're the better people. We're compassionate. We're the nicer ones. We're such good people. And I don't want to be a bad person. So that's why I'm a Democrat. I don't want to be a racist. I don't want to be a racist. Don't want to do any of that stuff. Don't want to be a bigot. Don't want to be mean, right? I'm telling you right now, I'm not fat shaming, right? Because if you fat shame, right, about the turkey neck people, you lose the moral high ground. So that's why I'm not doing it. I don't want to give up the moral high ground, because the moral high ground, it's called the high ground maneuver, right? It is a persuasive frame. And the Democrats have enjoyed the high ground for a long time. It's part of how the hypnotism worked. It's part of how the black magic of Democrat progressive politics work. So the moral high ground, and it's why I don't do any shaming, right? Body shaming, fat shaming. I don't do it. I don't make fun of people's looks, right? I don't like doing that. And here you had the actual Democrat Party's Twitter handle tell Stephen Miller to shut up, you ugly fuck. So this woman here says to her husband, shut up, you ugly fuck. Now, it's true, Stephen Miller is not a beauty, Okay, that's true. He's not a good looking guy, but his wife's gorgeous. So good for him. All right. Good for him. I bet he is a great guy and really smart. I like him, but he's not like a great looking guy. Right. And that's okay. But do you have to go out and call him an ugly fuck? Right. So this is where they're starting to really lose the moral high ground. And so this girl, Paulina Mangubat, Paulina Mangubat, indeed, is as Katie Miller says, this is the way to stay on the moral high ground. So this is how you're seeing the high ground shift, and you're actually seeing it. We're going to talk about Spencer Pratt in a second. He's been number one in leveraging this moral high ground thing and reversing the polarity on it. But indeed, it is sad, actually, that a sad liberal named Paulina, which is my Pew, says 50% liberal women at some time have identified that they have mental health disorder. So, this is the same violent political rhetoric that is leading people to shooting up the house, right? So there you go. She's got a great podcast as well, Katie Miller. So there you go. This is the end of their moral high ground, and one of their most persuasive levers is leaving them and leaving the levers. They tried as well. One of the neat things, this is a funny story from today. Former First Lady Jill Biden, right? Remember, she said she thought Joe Biden was having a stroke during the debate. So one of the neat things about the debate was that it was one of these rare instances when Democrats and Republicans and everyone, there wasn't like a civil war about it. We all saw the same thing, Democrats and Republicans. And so she's coming out now and saying she thought he had a stroke, and this is causing a lot of confusion in Democrat circles. Here, this is the day after. She said she did a great job and gave him the puppy head tap thing. Here you see the people, just lying about not knowing, but now they're saying that she's lying, right? One former Biden official reacts. So the connection. What Alex is admitting here is that the former Biden official knew Biden was senile, but did not say it at the time, and is now calling Jill. You see it much. So the moral ground just not there. Here again, mayor of Chicago for the same lines. Here he's saying that all the teen takeovers, they're going to hold social media platforms accountable. Chicago can't just catch a break. First, Kia screws it by making cars that are too easily stolen. And now social media companies are letting it down by providing youth as a means to communicate with one another while planning collective acts of mayhem. Geez, Chicago just needs a break, right? They just need a break. They got to get that break coming. But this is it, that moral high ground thing. I'll read this and you'll see this comes from the great Mike Solana in Pirate Wires. And Jesse Arm says, this is the best piece yet distilling what the Spencer Pratt phenomena is all about. Right. And this is it here. If you had to distill all the criticism into something coherent, I think that it might just be that Pratt reminds libs of Donald Trump, who they hate. And he talks about crime, which is bad for lib politicians. People also have a lot to say about AI generated campaign advertisements that fans produce, which pundits say credit, blah, 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 but that's not the important part here. The point here is Pratt is another funny, charismatic white guy from the world of entertainment who obsessively discusses an extremely popular issue. We are not good as good upstanding people in one party state controlled by the DNC supposed to discuss. In the case of Trump in 2016, that issue was immigration. To a certain extent, Trump's winning issue continues to be immigration. But for Pratt, the winning issue is the obvious fact that many of LA's homeless victims, who Americans are expected to imagine as exclusively a class of sweet-spoken, down on their luck single mothers, are in fact violent, drug-addicted criminals. Running as a Democrat in a city controlled entirely by Democrats, with the bureaucrats who run the place to the reporters who cover for the bureaucrats, is mostly a sweet gig. But when things start to crumble as badly as they have in LA, and you've completely defeated the neutered Republican Party you're supposed to keep around for purposes of witch burning, the act of noticing problems, and honesty taboo, if you will. And that is what we're seeing. And that's why he's grabbed the moral high ground. And the moral high ground is just simply the most persuasive frame. If you can stay on the moral high ground, you can persuade people. So, whoops, this is now stupid. There we go. Speaking of the moral high ground, I got someone who likes to stay on the moral high ground.
You might be the first person to ever say that, Nolan, but thank you. And also, what's wrong with funny, charismatic white guys? We've got a couple of them here on Rocks
We
and
love
TV. They're
them.
okay.
We don't.
Yeah, they're
No
all
one's
right.
complaining. We're loving Spencer Pratt. We're loving the campaign, and we're loving the Spencer Pratt summer and all that stuff, right?
Is that what we're calling now? Spencer Pratt Summer?
That's what he's calling it. It's good.
That's what
It's
he's
good.
calling it. All right,
Yeah.
all right. Man, there definitely is some Trump to him a little bit in
Oh
terms of the theater, and
yeah.
he's kind of nailing that. I got to give him
He's
credit
even
where it's
got
due.
the cadence, the way he talks,
Does he?
repeating lines. Yeah. He's starting with the hands now. He's starting to do the New York City steakhouse hands, right? Do they have that in
He
Chicago too?
Oh yeah, we talk. Well, another one who does that, Scott. You ever seen Shane Gillis's stand up? He's
Of
always
course,
doing
yeah.
that. Oh, he's doing that.
And you'll have him on the show tomorrow. Gamucci's also a steak guy, like he's always New York City steakhouse guys.
I'm super pumped to get in with him tomorrow. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. Aliens. There might even be some Epstein stuff there. Trump, Iran war. It's gonna be a wild one with him tomorrow. And we actually have a really great guest joining you and I this morning. I don't know if you were aware of that. Jimmy Song is going to be dropping in with you and I in just a bit. So we got a fun one. Yeah.
Jimmy's been meeting with me on Telegram, and he keeps sending me invites, and he keeps.
Well, he's getting the real thing, so he's getting even more than he could have hoped. So, yeah, we got a fun one in the stores today, a lot to talk about. So I'll let you finish up with you and your crew here, Nolan, because we're going to get rolling with Jimmy here shortly. So everybody stay tuned. Nolan, Jimmy, and myself will be making sense of the madness in just a bit. So Nolan, I'll see you soon, buddy.
Real fun. We're looking forward to it.
All right. See you there.
Good.
Yep. See you in a bit.
See you later, my man. You heard, Hank. We got my old friend, interesting guy, fun guy. That should be interesting. What are folks saying again here? Pope Hank. That's for the love of the troll behavior crew. Now only Nolan is quantum fuzzy in and out. Am I really? Is there mosquito in here somewhere? I'm really crashing out now. Oh yeah, Ed. Ed's back. Ed's back. Vote Dan Blazarian. I don't even know who Dan Blazarian is. Don't even know. But BTC Plebinator, what about the APEC guy? Cornyn was an APEC guy. Sexton's not an APEC guy. Cornyn's one of their biggest APEC guys. Too bad he lost. There you go. How do I watch this show? Oh, come over, Gary, to any of the Roxham channels. Roxham TV on YouTube, which is where you're coming at me from now. This show is on there right now, so you can just go there right now and catch the end of this, and it'll turn into Hank's show in a second. You're on the comment channels that I use to be able to do live comments, so it's not the only channels you'll find this show on. These are the folks who want to talk or just watch it without the Chiron around it, so there'll be a Chiron around our version, so there you go. Great show today. Crush that like, everybody. Indeed. Roxham TV on YouTube. Exactly. On Rumble too. All right, folks, we're gonna make way now so Hank can take over the broadcast and I can come back as a guest. So I'll see you all in a few minutes. Thanks for all the comments today. Thanks for coming, BTC Plebinator. It was fun. We won't always give you so much attention, but today I decided to have a little fun talking about Kentucky congressmen. It all comes down to the Kentucky congressman. Everything hinges on Kentucky. Speaking of everything hinges on Kentucky, I wanted to, one last video before we go. Let me close a bunch of these. This is not Kentucky, but it made me think of the Mississippi River because there was a fun version of the statues, and I'll play those before I go. Someone actually redid the things from Lord of the Rings with the statues. They put them in. So we're going to play that for you as our last. Med. Here. Look at this. We want the statues.
Long have I desired to look upon the kings of old, my kin.
Wouldn't you love to see this? This is the golden age, BTC Plebinator. We're getting the golden age. This is it. When these are in, it's the golden age. Crazy, huh? So cool. So cool. All right, folks. Let's do it. Peace out, everyone. See you all tomorrow or right after this over on Hank's show. Peace.